is what it would have been at the old rate in the red there. And then if you drop down to the next section is what I actually paid. So if you look down here at the yellow, this is what 2025 the increase would have been if I paid at the current new rate versus the old rate. So it's basically, for those of you who don't have what page I'm having here, like for Bantam Grill, our sewer increased 70%, so it's a $2,000 increase. The water increased 73%. It's a $1,500 increase. So the total for 2025, if the whole year had been at the current rate, the new rate, we're looking at like a $3,600 increase. And then for Pearl, it was around $3,000 total. Our water usage is pretty consistent year-round, and we use it for cleaning the restaurant, cleaning the plates. It's not optional. It's not. So I guess like what Kate was saying is like reducing the usage of water. I could go around the kitchen and be a Nazi about it, but we're not going to substantially reduce the water. And I kind of like did some ChatGPT research, which, I mean, take it for what that is, right? But every town does water differently. And if you go back 30 years when I was a student at Conval, I was the kid in the math class that raised a hand and was like, where am I ever going to use this algebra? And the teacher's like, oh, you'll use it. Well, when I started trying to compare Peterborough's water rates to other towns, that's when I was like, oh, I should have paid more attention out. Because here's the thing, Peterborough does it by the cubic foot, and Jaffrey does it by 1,000 gallons is how they base their rates. Well, a cubic foot is 7.48 gallons. And so then you got to convert from gallons to cubic feet, and then from that to 1,000 gallons. Anyways, the point is, every town does a different system, and getting like a comparison from town to town is challenging. But from what I've seen, no other towns really do more than 2 tiers. And the new system we have now is 4. And the top 2 tiers, and that is super punitive to anyone using that amount of water. And that's especially the top tier. And that's going to be almost exclusively businesses. And I understand the history of how this came about. And I know that the water department has had problems with restaurants specifically in this town because the grease goes down into the sewer and it's expensive to treat. And they've, over the decade plus that I've been dealing with them for both the restaurants, they've come up with different solutions, and none of them really seem to work. So I understand that raising the rates or having businesses like mine pay more makes sense, but it should have been done in a way that maybe restaurants pay an extra fee, towards that. But the way this is, it's just such a huge all-at-once increase instead. Like, I don't know. I also, like, in ChatGPT, I kind of like looked up what Peterborough was versus the state as a whole, trying to get like just a better idea. And it was a little bit more of a clear picture there. I'm still not 100% certain this is like the facts, but from the best I was able to see, that from like the New Hampshire 2025 water survey, New Hampshire Environmental Services with the Environmental Finance Center did a study in 2025, and this is based off residential households using 90,000 gallons of water, or 12,000 cubic feet. It seems like a lot to me, but I don't really know. But the rate, the average for the state would be $868 a year for water and $1,100 a year for sewer. And if in Peterborough, if a resident was using that amount of water, so 12,000 cubic feet, they'd be paying roughly $1,100 a year for water and about $1,600 a year for sewer. So that's about $750 more a year compared to the state average for the town of Peterborough, if they were using that amount of water, which for a household seems like a lot, but that's about a third of what we use yearly. So I guess that's what I got. I don't know. Just throw it out there. I mean, do what you will. I know it's tough running the business, and to add another expense like this is challenging. So it's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought Weldon. That's good. It's another aspect that we're going to get from this. Anybody have any other things to add or questions?
I would like to say something,
Sure.
but I just want to make sure if there are any questions first, because mine's going to be a little more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't see any.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming, because it's really important, and we do want to support the businesses in this town. It's part of our heritage, it's part of our master plan, it's what our community wants. I do think we can probably improve it. And I personally have started working on that. So I think there are some things that we've realized. We had a bond. That was a big part of what was happening here with the Coldstone Spring well coming in, and the bond being at a point where we had to start making sizable payments to cover the bond that was issued for Coldstone. And there was a consideration for a combination of when we had to raise the rates because of that, both sustainability from a conservation standpoint, but there's also affordability, and we have to be able to balance those. And I think it's important for us to relook at it and see if we can make it a bit more equitable. And in our next item, we're going to cover some things that we discovered related to multifamily dwelling units, because that's another area that we have come to realize is also being significantly impacted, and so we have some ideas about what to do for that today. But I also want to let you know that I hear you, and I am very interested in seeing what we can do to provide some more equity across the spectrum of use. That's all I can say today. I haven't completed my analysis, but I just want to say that I hear you.
Okay, well, thank you. And so do we follow up with you? And
Well, I would be sharing what
Okay.
I'm doing with this group,
Okay,
and then we would decide.
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
We did, this just rolled out, and it took a while to get to the point to have this tiered system work. How long did we work with that particular company?
It's probably about a year.
About a year, right? So, and it's brand new, and I felt pretty strongly that we should give it some time, because we heard, all of our bills went up. We're like, wait a minute, what's going on? But we should give it some time, a couple of cycles, to see who is really impacted, who really isn't, and of course, immediately we heard from, we're hearing from you guys, we heard from the multifamily, apartment building owners and that sort of thing. So and like Bonnie said, we are going to look at aspects of it and maybe come up with strategies to help everybody so that we all kind of share in that. Okay?
Yep.
So, yeah, thanks. So it's important that you came here and showed us this stuff, and it's good feedback to add to our investigation into this. But the bottom line is we have to pay for our water. And it's a limited resource, so.
yeah, I think a little thing like that's tricky about it is, again, it was the fourth quarter of a fiscal year, so like it's in nobody's operating budget, which that's kind of a slam. And I'm not trying to be offensive, but it seems like somebody should have, at least from a business standpoint, been able to see the writing on the wall there. Like, I went on our town committee page and I see we have like a lot of committees, but what committee would have been responsible for seeing like the back, like if you had taken 10 business water bills and looked to see what they were going to increase, the writing would have been on the wall to see that like somebody like me, my bill's going up $7,000, right? And I'm not saying you should just do the golf course, but it kind of seems like some foresight should have gone into like people being angry about that. And was that even the thought when you guys were doing it? Because things sound good in theory, but then when you apply it, obviously, not so much. So is there a committee that looks at like the business point from where like these new policies are put in?
Not per se, but town administration worked with the company that did the model. Do you want to?
Exactly. We didn't specifically look at that, and to keep in mind that we implemented these rates at the beginning, essentially the very beginning of our fiscal year, which starts July 1. So that was the goal, was to try to get these rates in place at the beginning of the town's fiscal year. I don't think anyone expected after as wet a spring as we had that we were going to be going immediately into a drought for the rest of the summer. And so when the rates were implemented, that was not the expectation for the bills that we projected.
But did this company have like proven things from other towns where it was successful
Yes.
and businesses weren't mad?
Everyone, no one's ever happy to see their rates go up.
Sure.
So that's just across the board.
Yeah.
But with the way that the rate model was set up before, when there was no tiered system, and I can pull up a summary of it, which is right here. Let me zoom in so we can all actually read it.
The irony is that I had the Waterworks lunch where they described all this stuff, and I was like, oh, my bill's probably gonna go up a little bit.
Yeah. So this is, after the town voted to move forward with Coldstone Springs, we knew that there was going to be the additional cost of the bond, and sure enough, that's had a big impact. If you look at what we would have done if it was just the old system, the way that the rates were set up, you can see down here, so this was the annual service charge, the minimum usage, anything below 750 gallons, or cubic feet, sorry, goes to the annual service charge. Anything above that would have to go up to a rate of 11 cents per cubic foot. So that means everyone's rate would have gone up 82.5%. Your rates did go up higher, your rates went up 85%. It's a 3% difference. So yes, it definitely puts more of an impact onto the larger users like yourselves, but it really wasn't going to be dramatically different. The town had for many years been using funds that were available within the fund balances of the enterprise accounts, funds that could have been going to capital improvements or whatnot to keep the water rates low. But we're at the point where we can't do that anymore, and the water rates absolutely had to go up to be able to make the bond payments on the Coldstone Springs. So
I'm just curious about like the timing. Was there any talk of like maybe doing it slowly, like the increase slowly, so that
really no ability to be able to do it in slowly just because of the size of the bond payments.
And the timing of the bond payment.
okay. That seems like it could have prevented all of this, really, if it just could have been smaller.
If we could go back in time, 10 years ago and started increasing the rates then, yeah, it could have been, staggered.
Well, note
out.
to self, next time,
Next time we have a multi-million-dollar well project, yeah.
any type of multi-million-dollar project, maybe, just do it slowly. Okay,
Can I ask you a question, Katie? You
Yeah,
don't have
please.
to answer it if you don't want to expose it.
I'd love to.
What kind of rate increases are we looking at in terms of greens fees? And
Well, it's gonna be usage. So if you golf more on Sunday, perhaps you'll probably get charged more.
But you raised membership fees this year.
I did, $25.
Is that going to cover it?
Not even remotely. But I was joking, Bill, because you golf on Sundays, so that's why I said Sunday people are gonna pay more. But I was thinking of actually doing that for a hot second when I was pretty mad. But I think that for me, because it's been here forever, people literally do get mad when I raise $1 on anything.
Yeah.
So $25 is gonna make a lot of people angry, but like that's not gonna touch my cost. That's gonna I don't know. And we don't have any well solutions up there, so we rely on the town, which is why I want to work with the town. It's just when I'm thinking worst case scenario, $5,000 and it's $10,000.
Now, are you operating off an irrigation meter for the greens?
Yeah,
Okay, so you've got it all right.
yeah.
And I understand that years ago, somebody tried to put a well.
They've
up
tried to
there.
dig multiple times. It's like all granite up there is what I've been told, so there's no water. But that's why like I can't change how much water I use. I mean, it looks like Scotland up there in the summer because everything is brown. The only thing that is green is our greens.
The greens, right.
You know, so we water as little as we possibly can and like still have a functioning golf course. That's why like I don't have a choice in how much water I use. And I have efficient dishwashers inside and we try, you know, but it's the water outside.
Raise your fees for cocktails, how's that? Make a fortune.
Okay. That'll be that's one of the things.
But don't water down the drinks.
More glasses.
Okay.
All right, no ice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Sure.
It's important to hear this feedback.
Yeah.
You know, we're listening.
We're listening, we're working on it too.
Yeah, Rick Lesser. I was just curious, when you had this company do this analysis, was the business aspect looked at as well? You know, or is it strictly across the board, users A, B, and C, tier 1, 2, 3, that could be impacted? Or was there a separate look at how businesses would be impacted?
It didn't look specifically at businesses other than acknowledging that the larger users are all going to be commercial. So that's how it was looked at. They've got a lot of experience doing this. I want to say it was like they've been doing it for at least 15, 20 years. I mean, they've been in the business a long time with, you know, doing these rate models. And they did a really comprehensive job. Happy to go over it with anyone who wants to see it. It really is impressive. They did historical research that went back at least 10 years, looked at wet years and dry years and modeled all that out. Took a look at our capital improvement plan, took a look at our budgets. The rate model itself projects out, estimates out the budget for many years in advance. It's really quite comprehensive.
Anyone?
I have one more quick question.
Yeah, sure.
And then I'll stop talking.
No, you don't have to.
So,
We're gonna continue
just
this
moving
conversation.
forward, just like I'm thinking out loud here, when there's policy changes or things need to go up in town, would it make sense for there to be a committee, and maybe it already exists, and this is why I'm asking, that like looks at something from a business lens, like how this is gonna affect businesses? Because I really feel like if this had been played out for 2 seconds from a business perspective, it wouldn't have gone through, or it would have been changed, just with how drastic it is. But out of all those committees, does one specifically like think just about businesses?
There is an economic development authority.
There is.
Yeah.
It would have
And
been
Bill-
appropriate for
Bill's
them to
on
consider
that.
this.
It would have been, or,
It would have been.
okay, but it wasn't.
No, it wasn't specifically covered.
Okay.
But I also want to say that as much as the businesses are hurting, especially given how high you are on the tiers, there are other people in town that are also hurting. And that's what really motivated me to want to take a relook at it. So, yes, we have the bond, we have to pay our obligations, but also can we do it in a way that maybe works better for everyone? Yeah, so that's my commitment.
Okay.
And there were the people that weren't even using enough water to meet the minimum, but they were being charged the minimum, which we also have to balance it. So, it is across the board where it affects every one of us.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, it's tricky, and I totally get that. It's just maybe more voices working together, and I know probably more people on the committee is worse for getting things done, but maybe just having all the perspectives in there could be helpful when changing the policy.
Those are very good suggestions, and I'm going to take it back to the EDA. We have been working very hard to try to get business owners on the EDA. They just don't want to serve.
I've never done it.
Now, you've never been invited.
Okay.
I know a number of people in the downtown area. But
How often do they meet?
monthly,
Okay, that's,
Now,
and it's,
okay.
to be honest with you, it's being revived hasn't been all that active.
Okay, well, I'll reach out about how to
If you
get
want
on
to
that
serve on the
committee.
committee, let me know,
Yeah.
we'll put you on.
I'd love to be on that committee.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, I'll set you up.
I would. Thank you. Can't wait.
Great, we've got another volunteer.
Good job, Bill.
All right, well,
You are
why don't
on
you just
record.
head right in?
I know I'm on record, I'm fine.
Yeah, it's on there.
Yeah, it's great.
So, our next, we're gonna talk about the incentive program for multifamily. Any landlords here? Anybody with big properties here to advocate for this?
I have a landlord with an in-law apartment, so I'm minimally affected by it.
Listen up.
And they have two, you have just one meter?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So we have the draft policy for this that we reviewed.
So just briefly, the select board, after discussing some of the impacts that we were seeing from the change in rates and rate model, challenged staff to develop a program or a draft of a program to look at that would help to encourage multifamily building owners, property owners to install meters for each unit in their property and help them, in that way, reduce the cost not only for themselves, but also for their tenants. It would provide a true read of the actual uses of water in each of those units, so really it still meets the program goals of encouraging conservation on the user level. So we did do that. There is a summary of the program as well as a draft of the contract that the property owner would enter into with the town. This program also includes irrigation meters, so properties that have extensive gardens that don't already have irrigation meters, this also provides an incentive to set those up. In short, what the town would do when someone has applied and is qualified to be part of the program, we would then go in, they would go through the building process. They would still have to get permits, they would still need a licensed plumber or whatever trades are necessary to do the work, to be on board. But the town would waive not only the cost of the building permits, but would also waive the cost of the meter and the meter installation, which we do typically charge for. So that's the short of it. And there's quite a bit of documents that went along with this. I'd be happy to take any questions about it.
So I did read in the documents that the select board would set the number, the dollar amount.
The cap.
The cap for this incentive program.
Mhm.
Do we know how many people may take advantage? When we do set that cap, where is that money coming from?
Sure.
Other taxpayers?
No, it would be, essentially it'd be spread out in the utility department, so it would go 50% to water and 50% to sewer. We just wouldn't charge for the building permit fees, which means we're not earning anything off of the building permits.
Right, it's just
So
a
there's
fixed
no loss
cost.
there.
Yeah.
There's no loss there.
Yeah.
Maximum potential, we estimate to be around 800 units in Peterborough. And so at approximately $250 a piece for meters, if every single unit, every single one of those 800 units were to get its own meter under this program, maximum exposure would be $200,000. And again, that would be split between the two. I don't think that there's going to be that many. I think, we were talking about it, and we think that a reasonable estimate cap for the program might be $30,000 or $50,000. And it could be revisited if necessary.
So spread over the rest of the utilities, which would mean other water users would be.
We would probably be looking to use fund balance if we can, rather than increasing the rates.
Okay.
We do have some funds available that could go to something.
And we could set the cap based on what's available.
Yeah. Or, just have at least a trial period and use that to gauge interest in the program.
And so we had heard from some multifamily property owners,
Yes.
correct? And they were very concerned, just like we heard this evening about the water. And so were they notified that we were going to be doing this?
No, I didn't notify anyone specifically about this.
Because I was wondering why no one was here to advocate for us. Yeah.
I've had a lot of correspondence from multifamily owners letting them know there was this meeting tonight, that I'd be following up with them tomorrow and the next couple of days. For those that have been interested in staying in touch about it.
And how
And
many?
they didn't choose to be here this evening.
far as I know, they knew the meeting was happening, but,
That's good. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and how many developments?
probably a half dozen owners that I've been in
And
regular
big,
contact
small?
with. I don't know the size of the units.
Okay.
Some cases I do. The housing trust and a couple of the landlords that own numerous buildings with substantial amounts of apartments, but
Okay,
beyond that, I don't know.
that's helpful.
But we've been keeping a list of people who have reached out and who said that the board and the staff are working on a potential program, and I'll follow up when we have something.
Okay.
And Nate, you feel comfortable running this kind of program?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? Yeah.
Are there any nonprofit users that would be like about multifamily, but they're not an institution?
Kentucky
Say
Housing
the
Trust.
hospital, for example.
No, not the hospital, they wouldn't qualify. So this is specifically intended for multifamily buildings. But Kentucky Housing Trust is a nonprofit.
And it was really because, say a building has 12 units in it, most of them have one water bill, and they don't know which unit might be front of the dishwasher 7 times a day, or whatever, that's whatever the example might be. So the incentive is for these landlords to put the meters on each unit, so they can get a better gauge, if there's a toilet leaking in one that other units are paying for in their water bill. So it could really zero in on where they're paying for, where their usage is, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it seems like a fair project.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had a moral dilemma when we started looking at this, when we started thinking about the fact that there could be like 6 families in a unit, and they're all on the same water meter. They go right up to the 3rd tier, right off the bat. So, and that's inequitable, and we knew that. The whole program here is an evolutionary process, and I know that we're going to be looking at it over the next year at least to try to refine it so it's much more equitable for everyone, including our businesses, multifamilies, so on and so forth.
One question I had is, and I have a lot of just little detailed things that we don't necessarily have to cover here, but I just want to make sure we think about as we finalize the contract and program description. But one thing I was thinking about more generally is if, for instance, if someone wants to put an additional irrigation meter on their property, so they don't have to pay the sewer rate for the irrigation, will they have to pay a second meter fee?
Yeah, there's a minimum charge regardless.
Not on the irrigation.
Not on the irrigation?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought it was on both.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, so for those that add the irrigation meter, they're not going to have to pay an additional?
There's no minimum charge on the irrigation meter.
Okay, perfect.
It's just a straight rate.
Okay, perfect. And then for the multifamily though, each individual unit, once they get their meter, would have their own base rate.
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
They would be treated as a single.
That's it, just a regular unit, yeah, single family, whatever.
Which is what we were trying to accomplish.
I just want to make sure that as we go through this and we have some sort of day periods here and what timing, I just want to make sure we take into consideration, for instance, the permit timing, and we can't always predict when permits will be ready. So I just want to make sure no one gets penalized for that. And I also wanted to make sure that if anyone, there was another timing period here, I just want to make sure that if someone needs to change some part of their building because they have to be able to accommodate the meters, that if they show that they're diligently working on that, it might take longer. So I just want to make sure they're not penalized if they're earnestly trying to to make it work.
That is something that we've talked about, and it's just, I think it's gonna be on a case-by-case basis, and there may need to be extensions to a particular, a complicated property or what have you, but, but a show of good faith effort, would be important there.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely all stuff that we can, this is the first, really the first presentable draft of this program. So it's not necessarily the final version, so, we still have a few details to work out. You still need to draft up an application, and get that all out there. But we really wanted to make sure that, we had at least all the pieces in part in place so we can start moving forward with billing for this past quarter. So.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I also just want to make sure, I'll limit my comments to just this last point I want to make, which is I just want to make sure we talk about rebate payments based on the funding availability. I just want to make sure that if someone is in process and they've been pre-approved, that they would not be subject to getting stopped or not getting the rebate if they invested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any way to have a guarantee that the landlord of a, whatever, 20-unit building won't just raise rents to cover this, they'll actually give each unit a meter, if they'll have a meter, they get their meter and pay the actual water bill instead of just a blanket raising of rates? Because that sounded like what was going to happen when we instituted this new water tiered system. It seemed like what we heard was we went to raise rates.
Yes.
So if this is something that could mitigate that across the board so that it doesn't just raise rents on blanket, 100, 200, whatever, 300 a month, where it would be an actual, because there's no point in putting the meter in there if you're just going to just throw the blanket raised rent in. Is there any way to?
I don't know. That's something I'm going to have to ask town attorney about. I don't know if it's something that we can work into the contract.
I mean, I would think that if the individual meters are put in place, I mean, there may be other reasons why the landlord needs to raise the rent, but it shouldn't be, and that we don't have control of their business, but the water piece shouldn't be a variable, because then that would be outside of their expense as a landlord. So that's how I would think of it.
Yeah, just as a small little landlord, I agree. I think it would be almost impossible to, determine, why rent was getting raised, whether it was water or whether it was taxes. So that's going to definitely be problematic, I think. I read the draft quickly this afternoon, and just a couple of quick comments. There's just a ton of legalese in there, and maybe that's all required, but to wade through all the legalese, I missed the fact, and I was going to raise my second question, in that when I first read it, I said, this looks great. It looks like if you participate in this program, it's a done deal, you can get this work done. And I thought everything would be free. Now I realize that when you said installations could be covered, permitting would be covered, it doesn't cover the plumbing costs.
Correct.
Right, and that wasn't clear to me from the draft. So I think you can just make that crystal clear that there will definitely be, for everybody, some expenses involved incurring that plumbing work.
Yeah, no, I think when we put this out, really put it out as a program, we're going to make it very clear. It does not include prep work. It does not include, any kind of planning or any of that has to go into it. That is entirely on the
Just want to
property
make that
owner.
crystal clear. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
What action?
In process.
Okay, you were just basically presenting this, if you don't need any action from us at this point?
I don't know that we need official action tonight. I don't think we're ready to just move it forward to the next step. We're meeting every week at this point, so once we have it finalized, we'll come back and we'll just represent it. So here it is. Thank you.
All right. We had minutes from January 6th. I make a motion to approve those as written.
Second.
Anybody on the committee saw any discrepancies? All those in favor? Aye. All right, Bob, good dance. We're getting new equipment here?
That's the hope.
Maybe?
Yes, Bosch Bearshine, IT Director. I have Tim Rezovic here, who's a tech producer. PEG stands for Public Education Government. We actually came in April with a different proposal with the same goals. Once we had to prove, we had a design issue, we'll say, and we had to go back, literally to the drawing board and redid the whole thing. And that's what we're, put in front of you tonight for approval for the cost of the upgrades, essentially upgrading the audio, upgrading the cameras, and also upgrading the broadcast equipment. And the biggest thing is besides the projector mount, is getting Zoom capability in this room to alleviate some other issues in other town buildings where we have, meeting rooms set up with teleconferences. And that was one of the goals of this project back in April. So we're back again, different design, a little bit different equipment, with a cost differential for approval to finally upgrade the room.
How much more is it gonna cost?
Right to it.
What's the difference, Tim?
Yeah.
6,800. Yep, $6,808 more
Then, what was the original?
than April.
Which ones?
What was it in April?
I don't actually have that part of the packet.
It's 6,000.
It's 48.
48.
What's the total
I think
now?
it was like 36 or something like that.
What's the total now?
It's on that sheet.
So it would be 48, 350 roughly. So it went up a few thousand. We had some different hardware involved. We do have a write-up of the differential that we can send over to the record, but pretty much everything changed. We literally went back to the drawing board. Even contacted other vendors.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Yes, I know about that. So on the Zoom, there was a Zoom option previously. In your original proposal, there was.
Yes.
And so I guess I just really want to make sure I understand when you say we now have a Zoom option.
Because we don't now.
No, but just differentially between the original proposal.
There was the Zoom option there. So the goal is the same. Zoom's going to be in the old proposal and this proposal.
Right.
So I think different equipment.
Okay, and can you just describe that briefly?
Sure. So on the old, it's weird saying old, but on the old system that did not get implemented, it was using essentially a Barco CX30, which is a dongle that plugs into a computer. Through the process, we learned that we actually needed a Barco CX50, which costs $1,000 more, but that also allowed us to eliminate the speaker pods, which were $412. Basically what this system allows is someone can plug in their computer to the Barco. The Barco will interact with the ceiling mic, also with the ceiling speakers, so we don't have any feedback issues. It will also connect directly to a dedicated webcam in that corner, which will show generally all the participants in the meeting to allow them to not need to face the laptop towards the person speaking. It's a semi-intelligent, cheapest camera I could get that actually would allow it to zoom into whoever's speaking a little bit.
Yep.
Not to get on their face, but just to kind of show, hey, the person's talking in this area. And it just allows it to connect to everything else in the room, whereas before it would have had to, we'd still have to have the speaker pods to bring out, which are like
But these speakers that were
jobbers.
sitting
Yeah.
here. Okay, that's so much better.
Yep, so we eliminated that
Okay.
and tied the system directly into the ceiling array.
That's so much better.
Yep.
Good job. So my next question, thank you very much, excellent. My next question is, do you have a vendor who actually will do it?
It's the same vendor.
Same vendor?
We tried a few things. They pointed us actually back to that vendor.
And will they actually do it?
This
Yeah.
design, yes. They got a little sketchy after we presented because this was a kind of a new thing. So it was a lot involved, but I think it was partly because they watched the broadcast, got approved, and they went back and looked at it. So they reached out to Tim literally the next day.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, because I know you had trouble with getting them to do it.
Yeah, we reached out to other vendors, but some pieces only this vendor does.
Okay.
Tim reached out to other towns as well.
Yeah.
So we did what we could. I think overall we're happy with the design, but
This is so much better.
it's definitely different. So
Okay,
that's where we're at, and we're asking $48,258 to be approved tonight to do the upgrades for audio, video, broadcast, cameras, everything.
As far as me, sorry.
Where's the funding coming?
The funding is all from the PEG budget, which is only funded by franchise fees, Comcast TV franchise fees. So whoever has Comcast television in Peterborough has to pay for the system.
so it's sitting there.
Yes, and these funds can only be used for the PEG station.
How much do we have in the PEG fund at this point?
I didn't ask Lily, but
80? That would have been good at, yeah.
I knew they were gonna ask you tonight, honestly, so.
He has $38,000, no, 88,840.
Oh, so we have plenty of funds. to
You
cover
do
this.
need to vote though, because you're going to be spending more than you're currently budgeted for in this revolving fund budget.
Which you can do.
Okay, okay.
I
Go ahead.
I do have a question. As far as maintenance goes, is something breaks, the camera doesn't work, how reliable is this company on callbacks to maintain things, or something we could do in-house? What happens going forward?
I mean, most of the time, if it's not a pure equipment failure, we can usually figure it out. There's a lot of moving pieces. When equipment fails, they're pretty good about shipping out. Have you had equipment fail?
Yeah, so the installation company does not handle any of it. We handle all of it.
There you go.
That was a piece fixed, right?
If a piece fails, I talk directly with the equipment manufacturer and get a warranty from them. Once the system is installed, the installers have like a 1 year, they'll talk to me about it, but it's not a monetary thing where they will replace the parts. They rely on the system itself, the individual warranties we have on the pieces.
So that includes everything we see in the room hanging from the ceilings?
No,
Or-
that just includes the kind of the magical boxes. So we have the switcher up here, which handles the inputs of the cameras and the audio, and that also includes the box we have downstairs, which handles the streaming output and the TV station output. Those are the big ticket items.
Okay. So we don't lose the WKRP in Cincinnati on air sign?
No, unfortunately.
More questions?
I'd like to move to approve the PEG proposal as brought to us today.
I'll second that.
Yeah. All those in favor? All right, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for putting in the time to interview.
So much better.
The library, of course, has
All right, yeah, up next, it's time to choose a new rate.
Yep.
Yeah.
How long has it been since our last?
6 months.
Well, we had a year.
We did. We actually had a contract that we were in. We talked about this though last time, 6 months ago, which was when we discovered that we still had 6 months left on the contract, which was great.
That's right.
Because that did save us a little bit of money and allowed us to go to clean 100 for a while. Unfortunately, we are not in a position to be able to afford that in the current budget. Our current budget really won't allow us to do much more than Granite Plus. So that is my recommendation to the select board, is that as these new rates become effective on February 1st, that the town, for its own meters, that this is not, we're not making decisions for the entire community,
No.
but just for the municipal meters that are not covered by net metering or the solar array, solar arrays, that they be looking at, that the board look at adopting Granite Plus as our new rate.
So Bill, I want to do Granite, like the local. So you know how what we're doing for the residents, I want to have done for the town. So where there's a piece that goes, instead of to the racks, it goes to the discretionary fund.
That's the Granite Plus.
That's what I want.
What did you budget for? The Granite Plus? Did you use that number as our?
No, I use the current rate, which is less than this.
Yeah.
So with the electricity
That's right.
budgets will have to increase.
Sorry,
Have to
what,
recalculate.
then what is the current rate?
13.5? 13.5.
But that's the clean 100 too.
But,
No.
so you didn't touch the clean 100?
No.
Okay, for this
No.
budget and such?
Oh, no.
Okay, okay,
No, we used what was the current rate back in October.
okay,
So when we started going through this whole process.
okay.
And so the entire town, every town building is only $112 a month for electricity?
No, I'm not sure. So this is,
Cost of supply.
Yeah.
What is the definition of the word supply?
so supply is the cost of the actual electricity itself, the kilowatt hours. Demand is the cost of the lines, all of the infrastructure that Eversource owns.
Okay. I thought
So
that
we're
was
not talking about
the case.
demand costs. We don't have any say over demand costs. That's entirely,
That's fixed by Eversource.
yeah.
And then the total cost, the question you asked, the total cost of the town.
Yeah.
Electrical bill.
We could go back and recalculate all that. But, I mean, you can see it
Is it in
broken
the
out.
budget?
It's in the budget, oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's all.
Everywhere you
That's all
see
I
an
was getting.
electricity line in the budget, that's where it is, yeah.
And it's figured at a lower rate right now.
Currently, yes, because when we drafted up the budget, we didn't have these rates yet. These rates just came out a couple of weeks ago, so.
I mean, I don't know how, if you really wanted to be rock bottom as much as we could budget-wise, we would do basic. What we do know, and this is what I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on, Bill, is we do know how much we so far are going to be benefiting from the discretionary fund, which would enable us, and maybe the town, I don't know, maybe the town accounts are just not big enough relative to the whole resident population to make a huge difference. But what we know is from us having the Granite Plus, with the discretionary funds, sending funds into our town, it really looks like we'll be able to make a meaningful impact on putting solar panels on the fire station, which otherwise we wouldn't be able to do.
One of many projects that
Projects.
we're considering.
Right, fair enough. And so to me, I guess, that's the question. Proportionately, how much more would we get from the town to contribute to that fund, and how meaningful is that relative to the rest of the population?
Yeah,
think
define
it's gonna-
meaningful, please. I'd like to know the dollar amount. Is it gonna be $100 a year we're gonna save and we have to wait 30 years for a solar rate, or are we talking thousands and thousands of dollars that would be saved?
From the town, you mean?
Granite Plus.
Between Granite Plus
would
and
be
Granite
incentive,
Basic.
and this is incentive.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm totally advocating Granite Plus because it does benefit the town.
I know, but
And it's
how
not that
much?
much more. Well, I don't know of that number because I don't know how much we use around town. Has anybody looked at that total usage?
You're asking for how many kilowatt hours are we drawing on the municipal meters? I don't have that in front of me now.
I know that Trish
Yeah,
was
Trish
working
does
on-
track it, yes.
She was working on getting a sense of that.
Yeah,
I
Trish,
suspect it's fairly substantial. I mean, I can't imagine it isn't substantial. Look at all the buildings that we have.
How soon do we have to vote on this?
we have to vote on it pretty soon. We need to make a commitment before February 1st, so we're creeping right up there.
Okay, I'd like to make two statements. It would have been helpful to have exact budgeted numbers with an example using each whatever rate. This town voted by 2030 to be 100% renewable in the citizenry, never mind town buildings, which I think has been kind of a long-standing goal with the town administration. I think this is a little bit of fudgery here. This is like, it's performative is what it is. Anything less than 100% renewable is performative in my eyes. And if we're only getting 40 cents, right? Yeah, 14.65, 14.25. They're not, if it's Granite Basic and they're going to give us an incentive. it's only
Tenths of a cent.
Right, 40 tenths of a cent per kilowatt hour. So I don't see this Granite Plus kiddie pool, whatever you want to call it, of money growing fast enough to actually be an incentive for, because I don't see any numbers. So how can I make an educated decision here based on what our town has said, you know?
So I would just like to share my thoughts
Please.
on that.
Yeah.
So, my perspective on Clean 100 and Clean 50. So, in this case, and I appreciate the goals that the town and its residents have set. My concern about it is you're paying a lot of money, and what you don't know is where that money is going to go. So what you're doing is you're going to, with that money, we're paying companies who in the past had created sustainable projects. But you have no guarantee that the money that goes into paying for these recs will actually lead to tangible, sustainable new projects. That's the problem I have with it. Whereas, if we do Granite Plus, where instead of paying for recs, that for me represents a black box, unknown what happens to it. If it is Granite Plus, now we have to know how much it is to decide to do it versus Granite Basic, but for me, at least the funds that go into that are coming to Peterborough where we have control over creating new sustainable projects. So it's, in my mind, it's a much more tangible movement towards sustainability. And so I just personally have a hard time with the whole rec paradigm.
So 67% coal usage in Granite Plus is okay?
No.
It's only 33%? I mean,
But
that could be where the rest of it comes from, right? You don't know.
you don't know.
Yeah.
You have no
So,
idea.
but that's the bet we're making? We're gonna throw...
But here's what I'm gonna say. For Clean
Are we
100,
keyed?
all those dollars, extra dollars, could also go to coal. You have no idea.
Taking their word.
But it says renewable.
But the
So
fact
this is a lie?
you don't know. Because what you're doing is, let's say you had a coal company that also had a solar installation. So you pay for these recs, you pay in, and you pay into this company because historically they had created a solar installation. But they also run a coal plant. And all your money that you use to buy those recs could go to the coal operation, you would never know.
Why have we all been fooled for the last decades that they implemented the 100% renewable goal in this town with municipal buildings?
Well, that's not, you can't conflate the two things. So the goal is that we go 100%, the goal is to achieve 100% clean energy. And we're doing that by building solar arrays and, trying to move as best as we can away from diesel and gasoline and towards more renewable resources. The REC program is RECs. I mean, it's renewable energy credits. They are, more than anything else, they're a financial instrument. They're not necessarily guaranteeing, like Bonnie is saying, they're not necessarily guaranteeing that the electricity that you are consuming is 100%. It is, at some point along the line, some entity in the country has created that green energy through whatever means, wind farm, solar array, what have you, and put that into the grid somewhere. And then they get a credit for that and they sell that on the financial market. And then organizations like Community Power purchase those RECs and say, we have guaranteed that somewhere in the country green energy has been created. And so that's really what you're purchasing. The electricity that you're consuming in Peterborough is the electricity that is currently in New Hampshire's grid. And whatever that source is, whether it's coal, whether it's Peterborough solar array, whether it's any number of things, your Bill's rooftop solar array, however that electricity is making its way into the grid, that is the electricity that you're currently using. So it's always been a little bit of, it's always been a much bigger, much more complicated thing. Yeah, it feels like a shell game.
It is a shell game,
Yeah.
kind of black box.
Yeah.
This is a
It is.
perennial conversation that
Yeah.
we've been having as part of the Community Power Committee.
Yeah.
And I happen to agree with Bonnie. I agree that we will have much more control over, bringing clean energy into Peterborough through a variety of different projects being funded by Granite Plus. There's an adder that's put into the rate. What is it, about 0.4 cents?
Let me do this. Let me go back. Let me talk to Trish tomorrow and see if there's a way that we can estimate what Peterborough's municipal, well, what our municipal meters would be putting into, the local fund. Let's see if we can put a number to that. Because no matter what choice we make, we're gonna be over budget. It's just how much are we gonna be over
Sure.
budget for the rest of this year?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fair.
I
I
think
mean, we
that's
had,
fair.
we had
Yeah.
that $49 to really
Yeah.
be flat. But I was being a little facetious in asking these questions, but, and I, of course, we know about the recs, we know about this. But I think part of it was the bigger incentive for demand, that the more people wanted renewable content, that's how they made their statement, was by purchasing that. Otherwise, there's no incentive by the bigger players to, we just saw a wind, offshore wind was just halted with 95% of the project done. And now it looks like it may move forward. But there are big players at hand that want to stop renewable energy. They think it's voodoo or whatever, they just want to make their oil money. So as a town, it was my understanding we were making a statement that that's where we stood. We wanted the country to move. It was a bigger picture statement, knowing that our dollars were not being, everything's not being made.
I should note that Granite Plus is the default, and over 70% of electricity users in the town of Peterborough who are part of this program are using Granite Plus. You have to opt out to get 2050 or 300, but most people don't.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, I will say, and Bill, you're closer to it than I am, but I will say that there was quite a robust discussion within the community power committee of this town about precisely this question.
Oh, boy. Yeah, there's some
Precisely this
arguments.
question.
Well,
And-
I'd love to hear.
And really ultimately, and there was some very strong advocacy for Clean 100. And ultimately, the committee voted and shifted, and even the person that was most of an advocate for Clean 100 completely shifted, that person completely shifted their view towards local contribution. Is that correct?
It's the flakiness of the rec market.
That's the issue.
That's what really is the big issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really a misnomer. Can we go back to that?
Yeah, we can. So, do you want me to come back next week with better numbers?
We're here
or-
every week, right?
Yeah, we're here in a week. So
Yeah, if we
can
can
do
pull
it.
it, that would
Yeah.
be interesting information.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Just a quick question on that last chart.
Sure.
That $90 or 95, whatever.
I don't know what-
Multiply that by something, right?
I don't know where that comes from. I think that was just a screen capture off their website, so.
But that's getting multiplied by hundreds
It
or
was multiplied by
thousands,
an average, whatever an average commercial or a G meter would be. So we've got many of them that draw all sorts of different amounts of electricity.
Right.
So it's not particularly helpful. What I really wanted that chart there for was just to show the kilowatt
The difference,
hours.
yeah.
That's the end of that. Rick, please, take over.
40 minutes late.
Sorry.
But it's okay,
Can
no,
we resolve
short
something?
discussions, go ahead.
Excuse
Bill.
me, one quick thing. I have a conflict on Thursdays now, because they changed the Select Board Advisory Committee meeting in Conval to be on the third Thursday instead of the fourth. And I'm also on the trustees, the library trustees, which means so
The time of day?
5:30 for the
Library trustee?
library trustees and 6 o'clock for the
I mean, it's kind of a stretch for me to get to the library, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I could probably maybe do it.
You want to do the library?
Sure.
You do have to go all the way down across the street.
I'm walking the dog over there.
So are
Okay,
you
wanna take-
proposing that we meet in the library? Is that what you? I just-
No, I need to be in one of those two meetings.
You can't be on both committees.
I'll be on the Convo committee and you'll be on the other committees.
Okay.
I'll let Corinne.
Okay.
And have her email me when the.
I'll forward it. There's a meeting this week.
But which Thursday of the month? Because I also have Concom.
Third Thursdays.
Okay, that should be.
Work. Yeah, they meet at 5:30 and then they do the board meetings.
Great.
I'll forward you the documents.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Very good.
All right, Rick. Okay, well, I just want to say hello to all of our members here tonight. We have a couple of new members that actually weren't available last week, so I want to introduce them. Dan Gross in the front row here. Dan, welcome to the Budget Committee. And Paul. And Paul, help me with your last name. Noci?
Noci.
Noci.
Yes.
Soft C. Paul Noci is also joining us here. And replacing one of our alumni, Carl Mebzino. Hi, Carl. And then we've got Dave Odlin in the back there, Don Parkhurst, Dick Reynolds, Mary Clark, and Al Lenos. I think I got everybody. Tony. Oh, Tony. Sorry. You moved your seat. And Tony Pascal. And I guess without further ado, we'll turn it over to Chief
Hi.
and talk about all these priorities.
Sure. Thank you. I don't know where you want to start. I don't have slides or anything prepared. What I figured I'd go through is, when we sat down this year internally, and then again working with Nicole and Lily, our goal really was staying within the select board guidance of level level ask across the community, really to try to develop a budget that was level service and focus on our service. As you flip through here, particularly on the ambulance side, there are a couple of things that have gone up significantly. And I sort of, went through, and I don't, do you have a preference, Rick, as to which budget we start with? I don't know what order they're in
The
the
most
packet.
controversial and complicated one first. Whatever that might be.
Let's start with dispatch.
Well, we'll start with the, the ambulance, supposed to ambulance, so we'll start with the ambulance.
We do have a few budget members that have a hard stop at 7. so
Sure.
in case- That's why I'd like to get the big stuff done
Yep.
first.
All right, so if we look at our ambulance, I sort of looked at, when I went through, things that had sort of deltas that would stand out as rather large. One thing to point out, in ambulance, fire, and emergency management budget, there's a line this year that's a new line, which is vacation and sick paid out upon retirement. That is for me. I plan to go during the next fiscal year, so that's an estimate for that. That's sort of a one-time cost until the next full-time person decides to leave and do that. So we're there. So sorry, folks, we can't really control or get rid of that one. You look at other things, ambulance operations, our salaries line items up about 9%. One of the things that creates that is we have the opportunity to fill more shifts, but it also gets us more in line with what we were spending back in 2024-25 when we had our full complement of paramedics. We went through significant downturn in our paramedic staffing, and the paramedics are our most expensive hourly employees per hour. All of our paramedics that come in, our goal is to have 2 paramedics on a shift 24/7. We're currently in the process, we've just onboarded and completed the hiring process with 1 full-time paramedic. We have another paramedic coming on part-time, who hopefully will be transitioned to full-time in April or May. He's currently in the process of retiring from a career job in Massachusetts as a firefighter paramedic. So we have that, and we're getting those folks in there. The other biggest thing on this ambulance operations is our increase in dispatch services. So the fire department is dispatched by Southwest Fire District Mutual Aid in Keenan, Hampshire. Southwest Fire District Mutual Aid is a municipal corporation. They exist solely to provide mutual aid coordination dispatch services to towns in Vermont and New Hampshire, about 80 towns total. They have a formula for calculating their budget. Their budgetary formula is based 50% on town population and 50% on valuation. They were, for the last several years, probably 8 years, their management objective has not been unsimilar to what Peterborough's was 10 years ago, which was keep the rate level at all costs. Those costs included expanding personnel to adequately deliver service, as well as increasing the infrastructure and replacing the infrastructure. They're now in a position where they're woefully understaffed. Their infrastructure is, in need of replacement. Motorola gives a 10-year lifespan on equipment. Most of their facilities equipment is pushing the 20-year mark. And with new administration in there and a new outlook from the board, they've realized that they really can no longer go forward with the old perspective that they had, and it's time to actually look at spending the money to improve the services. So the budget that they put forward for this year, which is what affects our assessment, is a realistic and accurate budget to start that infrastructure replacement and start the process of getting their staffing where their staffing needs to be to meet the call demand. So overall, we saw, as the town of Peterborough, a 41% increase in our budget based on, again, equalized valuation and population of the community. We split our assessment up between fire and ambulance based upon the call volume. So we take that dollar amount and just allocate the call volume. So the the 109,880 here represents the ambulance's portion of the call volume for our combined about $134,000 between fire and between Peterborough and Sharon's allocation. The fire part is covered primarily out of the fire budget, but there are other ambulance calls to go to Sharon. So that's how we came up with that allocation. When you look at the increase in the fire side, it was not a significant increase because, again, we're allocating that across the ambulance budget based on call volume. Looking at that.
So the dispatch services actually went down for fire and
No.
Yes.
Yes, it did go down. It did go down for fire because of the reallocation. Although the overall cost to the Peterborough taxpayer went up. The thing to realize is, assuming our call volume stays roughly the same, Peterborough is, I have this right here, what would it be, 49%? Sorry, 54% of ambulance calls are Peterborough, right? Something like that, just over 50?
For the distribution
For all of our calls.
Probably close to 60.
60. So 40% of that 109 will be covered through the billing cost to the other communities because it's a cost for the ambulance service.
So we don't use, for fire, we don't use dispatch services from Keene?
We do.
Oh, we do?
We do, but the fire calls are such a small percentage of our total call volume. So the number of times we're paged or dispatched to a call, it's about 400, only about 400 times a year for the fire department, and the rest are for the ambulance.
Chief, on that dispatch services line item, is this a one-time large increase?
No.
Or we're going to see this?
We'll see this, yep,
How long are we going to see this?
forever. This is the new, so we're assuming that they're going to attempt to maintain a level service budget going forward, or potentially increase. The money that's in there now is to manage maintaining the current radio system. They're working with Motorola to come up with a new solution for the entire radio system, which is going to be a multi-million-dollar project. They're doing a 10-year bond through Motorola. Motorola's going to bond that for 10 years, so that cost will then be shifted back to all of us as users. The one thing with that is the radio equipment's guaranteed for 10 years, so we're really looking at a perpetual bond. Because when they get this first bond paid off, they'll be refurbishing their radio equipment. So we don't know what those costs are going to be going forward, and that actually dovetails into a future conversation tonight. I don't know if you want to have that now,
Might as well
or
just jump into it.
Sure.
I just want to ask if I could, though, with all of this that they're doing and upgrading and improving their capacity, still they have to maintain billing us based on the formula.
Correct.
So the formula is calls and valuation.
No, it's
Or
population and valuation.
valuation. So, unless the valuation changes dramatically, in that respect, the cost should, while higher now because they're following that very specific formula, should be maintained. Is that
Oh,
what
correct,
you're
but this is
saying?
not, I mean, the question was, is this sort of a one-time bump? It's not a one-time bump. This is the new
No.
baseline.
Right.
We're probably looking at 5 to 10% a year increase based upon whatever their operating costs are, plus a future,
Right.
plus future capital costs to help offset the cost of the new system.
Right, so, but it will be based on that formula.
Yeah, we're not looking at a 40% every year, but
Yeah,
we're looking,
yeah.
and there will be some adjustments, again, and going up. And the other thing too, I don't, just a point to bring up, I don't know what valuation they used for this calculation. I don't know if it was happening before or after the West Peterborough TIF came off, because that's a big jump. So that could have an impact on our specific percentage when they recalculate if the West Peterborough TIF is added back into the town's equalized valuation. So that sort of dovetails into another a conversation.
Before you go there,
Yeah.
Under ambulance operations, you've explained the bump in salaries. It's primarily because you've achieved staffing levels that
Yeah.
are favorable.
To get us back to where we were a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Why hasn't that had some impact on overtime?
So the overtime budget, there are two parts to the overtime. Not all of our people work overtime. So the only folks in our department that work overtime are the full-time paramedics. Under New Hampshire retirement system rules, non-full-time employees are capped at 32 hours a week. So we never have to pay overtime for any of our non-full-time people. So one of the reasons why we have such a large pool of people is we are capped at those 32 hours a week. So most of that overtime, a lot of it isn't the traditional overtime that you would think of for a private sector environment. All of our full-time paramedics work a scheduled 48 hours a week. So that 48 hours a week includes 8 hours of overtime built into their week. So there isn't a huge increase in where we budget that because that overtime is sort of remaining the same. The big difference
They
here.
get paid 48 hours a week, whether they work 48?
No, they work 48 hours a week. They all work 48 hours a week. They have 2 24-hour shifts every 7 days. So within a 7-day period, Saturday morning 8 a.m. to Saturday morning 8 a.m., they work 2 24-hour shifts every week. Or a schedule for that. So I think sort of pausing the ambulance budget now, and we can
If you don't mind.
move into the next.
Just real quick,
Yeah.
on the dispatch services, they're the only game in town basically, and we're happy with their
That's what we
service.
So
want.
that's what we're about to talk about.
We're going there. I do have one real
Yeah.
quick question. Why are these big, huge boosts in electricity costs?
Because we're moving into a 23,000 square foot building that's run entirely on electricity.
Oh, okay, so you built it into...
Yeah.
Okay.
This is an estimate, and not for nothing, but this is obviously a low estimate because it's based on the 13.85 cents, not the 14 point whatever cents. So when you look at the number of kilowatts for that building, we're probably one of the larger users on the
Right.
Having said that, though,
Yeah.
it is partially offset by our net metering
Right.
contract, so it is partially offset by the solar array that we have for the wastewater treatment plant. But since the fire station is a 24/7 operation, you can't just turn it off, turn the lights off when the sun goes down. There is going to be an increased demand there no matter what we do.
And that number is, we're hoping that number is a little bit lower, but we would rather err on the side of caution when we're working with Lily and working with the architect to do this.
And the company they brought in to estimate this is what they do. They estimate what your bill, what your electricity usage, what all your utility usage is going to be.
And was that the resilient buildings?
Yes.
Yes.
Resilient Buildings Group.
Yeah, Resilient Buildings Group is the group that's doing, they did all the energy modeling for that building. And one other thing, and then we'll get into the next thing. When the building is designed, the entire design of the building is designed to accommodate solar. One of the goals is to have solar, and I don't remember, Carl, I think looking at about 50% of the cost their estimate was about 50% of the electrical cost of the building could be covered through a solar array. And that's based on the square footage they have on the roof where they could actually set solar. So the rest, I think it was about 50% if I remember correctly. So you look at reducing that by 50% if we were able to put a solar array in that building. So, to the question about are we happy with dispatch services and are they the only game in town? Currently, they are the only game in town. The other communities around us, a few fire departments are dispatched by Hillsborough County or MAC base referred to, which is Milford Area Communications Center, run out of Milford. They are very small operations. The town of Greenfield recently switched over to MAC base. The way MAC base operates, though, is actually it's not a bad model. The community itself is responsible for all radio infrastructure in that community, and then all MAC base does is dispatch you on your radio equipment. So they provide the dispatch services and the facility to do that. As you may know, Peterborough PD is a combination of dispatching themselves, and then they have Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office as a backup. They pay a fee to Hillsborough County Sheriff's every year. I think it's $35,000.
It is $34,500.
$35,000 to Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office for dispatch for their services. Peterborough PD is in the process, and Lieutenant Zanakis is here to provide color commentary and backup. Lieutenant Zanakis and Mike Despriest, who's one of the dispatchers over there, the communications folks, have been working on a program to revamp their dispatch center. As we looked at this increase with the cost from Southwest, along with the fact that this doesn't actually guarantee any real fix to their infrastructure problems and the rest of it, sort of laying the groundwork to do that, with the police doing where they're going, Nicole sort of brought us together to start the conversation of, do we want to lay out a roadmap to make sure whatever we're doing now with the police department allows us the flexibility to add the fire department in the future. So, we're looking at somewhere around a $300,000 to $500,000 project at the police station when you include carpentry work and all the rest of it and radio infrastructure. It would be a shame to spend that money and realize for $125,000 more we could have built something that would manage the fire department. But since we didn't think of that in 2026, we're now looking at another $500,000 to integrate the fire department. So the vendor that the PD's been working with is a company called Allcom out of Massachusetts and Maine. They've developed Lakes Region Communications Center, several other communities in the state of New Hampshire. They also have a lot of work in Mass. Small town story, they actually took over for communication stuff in the town that I left, Weston, when I went to the fire academy. So spent 15 minutes for our meeting talking about people that we all know in common with the current president of the company who started up there as a radio tech. So what we're going to, and I don't know if we haven't really rolled the whole numbers up yet, but one of the things that we feel is important at this point in time to bring before the capital committee, the budget committee, and the select board is looking at, and I'll use a word that Pam never liked me to use, but she's gone now, the incremental cost of ensuring that their dispatch, the dispatch center that we build at Peterborough PD, will have the capacity in the future to provide full service dispatching for the fire and ambulance. In the interim, there are a lot of uses for that. Right now, they have a single dispatch position. Their new console, or the new array, will have 2 dispatch positions. We quite often, during storms, children in the arts, other types of events, we have somebody sitting at our station, and we're talking back and forth on the phone. We're trying to overhear each other's radio conversations between DPW, PD, and fire department to see what's going on from a coordinated approach to emergency management in the community. This would allow us to take that person sitting in our radio room, sit them right next to the police dispatcher, have access to the phones, be able to turn and say, hey, did the lieutenant just say he cleared that tree in Elm Street? Yep, okay, Elm Street's clear. Did the fire department just say they cleared this? And really be able to have a much better feel for what is going on in the community. It also gives them the ability to have some redundancy. Although our radio systems are co-located, they're separate radio systems. Blow a fuse, or a tube goes bad, sorry, well, not everybody in this room understands what that is, but something goes bad and they lose their radio, they push a button, they've got the exact same capacity now if we've built this system to have both of those in there. You know, I can tell you that we get good dispatch service. I think we get the best dispatch service that our system can provide, but our system is incredibly overloaded. You know, they have essentially the same infrastructure now that they had 15 years ago when they were probably doing, 25% less call volume. When, calls weren't as complex as they are, when departments were robust and they weren't being toned and retoned. Lieutenants and AUKUS would be more than happy to share with you anecdotal stories of, both administrative calls and emergency calls where there have been issues with Hillsborough County because you're dealing with dispatchers that don't know anything about Peterborough. They don't know 101 and 202. They don't know 136. They don't know that. I can say that, we are fortunate with having a lot of tenure with the dispatchers at Southwest. They do have a pretty good understanding of us and our community. That is not true at Hillsborough County. They have quite a large turnover. So it does become very difficult. The other problem, for both our dispatch center and Hillsborough County, we're one of many entities that are serving. They don't have any true allegiance to us, nor do we have any control over them. I mean, when the board of directors for Southwest voted their December meeting to go forward with these increases and get the bills out, the board chair, a question came up about, well, should we phase these in? How do we do it? And the board chair's response was, we really aren't in a position to do that. We've been underfunded, we have a formula, we need to stick to it, we need to do it. Where are people going to go? They don't have another choice. And, in a sense, they're correct right now, but that doesn't mean we don't in the future. And I think what we're really doing is future-proofing ourselves through this expansion of their project to ensure that, this community is in a position to, really maintain not only the safety of the citizens, but more importantly, the safety of its public safety personnel. Being able to get through on a radio. I mean, our radio communication right now with Keene is awful. It's awful district-wide because they continually have sites that are going down, they have problems. Don't get me wrong, under the new leadership there and the new administration, they're making phenomenal strides, but it's going to be a long time to get where it needs to be. And with all the old equipment, they're one lightning strike or one power surge away from, serious problems. I don't know, George, do you want to add anything, or Nicole, or?
Yeah, so, from my perspective, it's a no-brainer. The police department and the fire department have a great working relationship. Our dispatch services, we have 2 full-time dispatchers, essentially 80 hours a week, sometimes more if they have overtime, and then a couple part-timers. The rest of the time, we're relying on Hillsborough County. I'm biased. I like my dispatchers better. They know the town. One of them's been here over 30 years. The other one's going on for 10 years, I believe. So they're familiar with the town, and that's important because in Goffstown, where Hillsborough County is located, they might not be. They have a lot of turnover there. Certain landmarks, frequent flyers that we have, they're just not familiar with. We've had numerous cases of missed calls, non-serious emergency calls, callbacks, maybe something simple like a dog complaint or something. It gets lost in translation because they could get very busy out there. And when we have our dispatch in-house, nothing gets missed. There's oversight, we control the standard. Hillsborough County tries, obviously, but it's a lot to manage with several other towns. And that's not even getting into our radio comm issues. Officers stop cars on 101 by Church, for example. We can't make it out on our frequency. We need to put the infrastructure in and collaborate with the fire department to make sure every part of Peterborough and Sharon is covered. So we constantly have calls.
I just want to clarify, if I could. So as far as I understand, the police side of the dispatch infrastructure proposal is in the capital.
Correct.
Correct.
And what we're talking about here is adding the fire department.
Correct.
Are we talking about doing that immediately, or is that the thought, or just making sure that?
Yeah, we would need to do it. Yeah, so we would need to purchase the equipment at the same time to ensure that it's, that it's available when we need it. It's going to be built in. And it makes very little sense, as Chief said, at the beginning of his presentation, to just purchase the police now, and then in a few years say, no, we really need to add the fire in, let's go back, revisit it, and find that it's double the cost because of, needing to swap equipment out that we've already purchased. Perhaps equipment is, no longer available, changes in models, what have you, any number of things, any number of reasons on to. We do have a rough estimate, somewhere between probably $85,000 and $125,000 to add on. What we're gonna need to do, we don't have the exact quotes back yet, we're waiting for those.
We should have those by the end of the week.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
So,
so that was my
yeah.
next question, because I
Yeah.
heard 85 from you and I heard 125
Yeah.
Well,
from you.
I was looking at the high end,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
I was kind of shooting in the middle. I'm really, hopeful that it's going to be closer to the 85, of course, but we'll know by the end of the week. And then when we get to the end of the budget process, which we're finalizing, with the police department, we'll have the numbers, we'll be able to bake that in, we'll be able to know what the differential will be. And if there's any other funding sources, you were reaching out to HSEM.
I've had a conversation with our local liaison from Homeland Security Emergency Management. Quite often, there are some funds available for various portions, I wouldn't pay for all of it, maybe various portions of it, certain radio equipment, or anything like that.
Thanks. Oh, sorry.
Quick question?
Well, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah,
Just finish your thought.
Yeah, just one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we were to take, I see it as optionality. In other words, if we were to buy the fire side, we're paying for optionality.
Correct.
And so I just want to also understand if we did it in the 27 budget year, is there any additional operating costs that we would have to incur because of purchasing and how it would be used versus it not being used now because we don't have it?
Nope, so our operation would still remain the same. So for example, we would still during storms or, major weather events or things like that, or like Children in the Arts or any other large events in town, we would still have the same people doing what they're doing, we'd just be able to co-locate them and have them there. So there are no immediate increased operating costs. There is, however, the immediate increased ability to effectively manage incidents in the community. That would be instantaneous. And putting, having the opportunity to put those people in one place together and just have that clear communication. It would also give us much better coordination. One group in town that we have a really hard time coordinating with is the DPW. Because they use their radios, all they have is just simple channel point-to-point radios in their trucks. By being able to migrate them onto a shared frequency, we'd be able to talk with all three agencies anywhere in the town, which would really significantly increase our ability to respond to whether it's snow and ice storms, weather events, any kind of weather event, windstorm, snowstorm, thunderstorm, anything like that.
Just to clarify, this is only the fire dispatch we're talking about, so not going to affect the ambulance dispatch?
Fire and ambulance.
It will cover?
Sorry, yes.
So theoretically, that 109,000 could go away next year, or?
No, because that cost would be shifted to dispatchers here. As George mentioned, they don't have 24-hour coverage in their building. They rely on Hillsborough County for the time when their two part-time or their full-time, their two full-time or part-time dispatchers aren't available. We would have to move to having our people in that building 24/7 if we were to dispatch fire, and fire and ambulance, fire and EMS. So
That's why I was calling it optionality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mary?
Chief, are there any other implications, budget implications for going with that option in terms of fire training line items such as staff development?
Not right now. What we're doing when we manage that is a very low level of communication. We're not in there. One thing that would be kind of interesting or good is not to bore you more, the police department is about to switch their computer dispatch software to a company called CSI. You may be familiar with that. It's been in their program. That's the dispatch software that Southwest New Hampshire Fire District Mutual Aid just switched to last December. So it's a common platform. So our folks that use that are familiar with that, have an understanding of that, know what that looks like. So as they're in there, although they're not going to be looking at the police calls, as they're looking at what's going on with Southwest, they can help to manage that. And we have the ability to log into Southwest system and manage that through what's called a mobile data terminal, which is really just a remote terminal.
Is there a lead time, Chief, to getting the equipment once it's ordered or preparing to get the equipment? Is there some specifications that need to be developed and/or lead time? And then when would it be actually implemented?
So
The decisions are made.
we would need to expand our current dispatch area. We have room to the right or left, depending on which way you're looking at, in the records room to allow for more space for at least 2 consoles. We gotta be careful because where the window is, the public can't see the computers. There's privacy and siege issues, so we have to position them in a way that the computers aren't visible, and that would be expanding the dispatch into the records room, and then whenever we order the equipment, I don't know how long it takes. I mean, this stuff is complicated, and there's other infrastructure wiring that needs to be taken into account, so it's a hefty project, but once it's there, then it's there, and we access to it.
When is the planned implementation date?
For
For the, doing the desk and then purchasing and installing the equipment?
so that would be the summer,
Yeah.
after July 1.
So after July 1.
Yep.
So is the thought if this extra 100K or whatever the number is, that come out of fund balance again, or do you have any other thoughts as far as how to finance that?
No, so we don't have any more magic fund balance money to put towards it, unfortunately. We're hoping that there's going to be some grant monies to offset the cost, but that's going to be an offset. We'll need to raise and appropriate through taxation. So once we actually have the numbers, we're able to do a little bit more crunching. I'll have a recommendation to the board and the budget committee, but really just kind of wanted to get people thinking, get some questions, up front, as we, move into this.
Has this been relayed to the CIP? Have they discussed it yet?
Nope. Nope. Something that we've been pulling
Next
together.
September we'll talk about that.
Yeah, this is something that we were pulling together more or less on the fly in the last couple of weeks.
I think one, the other, and Lily's far enough away, I feel she can't reach me, she's short arms also. But the, her eyes will go. The other opportunity too is potentially readjusting some things within the CIP. If this is an immediate need now, and we do have some balance available, and looking at that, so there's the opportunity to readjust and take that now, so that as opposed to, hey, we need 100,000 now, maybe we can do 25,000 a year for 4 years, and then in 4 years, fire department's fund balance is back to where it should be or something like that. So there is, I think the key now, our key goal now is to, working with the vendor Allcom, identify what that cost will be, and then really ensure that we have the support and buy-in from the select board, budget committee, and capital committee as we move this forward, as part of the overall budget for the town.
Is there any possibility this could be somewhat virtual, like you would have fire dispatch in your new building and police would continue to be where they are after we've revamped that
So it's
building?
funny, we actually did, not funny, but we did have that conversation with the president of Allcom, who was up making his presentation to us. And there is the opportunity to do, it's not so much virtual, but what you can do is the 2 consoles that are operating do not have to actually be side by side. The 2 consoles can be in separate locations. So we could at some point in time move that into a separate location. There is the ability, there's the ability to do that. And the town of, is it Northampton they just did?
Hampton, yeah.
Hampton, they do that. Their police and fire have separate dispatch centers in their building. When they just did their build out there, they are connected virtually, so they both have 2 positions with 1 person sitting in them. So if either one is a problem, a second person can sit there, but if fire becomes really busy, police dispatcher can push a button, and now what he's looking at right in front of him is all the fire department frequencies, all the fire department information to take over and supplement that service. So we would have that ability.
It also provides us some potential redundancy in the new fire station. So if something happens down at the police department building, they'll be able to migrate up to fire department.
The Kentucky is never going to reach the lobby of the new fire station. It will reach the lobby of the new police station, the old police station if something goes wrong. Tyler.
Can we go back to just the very basic, in case anybody's watching? Someone has an incident, they call 911. And what happens?
So
with a call.
Yep. So in New Hampshire, your call to 911 goes to primarily for this area, Concord. The dispatchers, who are very competent, highly trained folks, answer the call. They determine where the emergency is and what the nature of the emergency is. They then transfer it to the most appropriate place. So it either comes to the fire department dispatch center or to the appropriate police dispatch center. Currently, police calls can go to Hillsborough County. That's about to change. You have a date yet?
January 21st.
So January 24th, you folks signed a letter a month ago or so, select board, authorizing the switch. Did they do that?
Yeah.
Authorizing the switch for Peterborough PD to become their answering point. So once the call gets answered in Concord, it then gets transferred to the Peterborough PD if it's law enforcement related, or it gets transferred to Southwest Dispatch in Keene if it's fire related. There, the call taker picks it up, has an opportunity to talk both with the telecommunicator in Concord, who has gotten the basic information, and then also to get additional information from the caller and stay on the line with that caller to help. In the case of a medical emergency, your dispatcher in Concord is going to provide medical assistance. They might teach you or talk to you through positioning somebody for CPR and initiating CPR. They might talk to you about putting direct pressure on a wound or things like that. If it's a violent crime or something along with the police, they will keep you on the phone typically and calm you down, try to get additional information so they can keep the dispatchers updated, the units updated on what's going on. And then we respond, we come, and hopefully we solve the problem. Yeah.
This future rendition of this dispatch services will be extended to our partner from the fire and ambulance service, to all various partners who are part of our system here, so sharing.
Potentially, yes. One of the things you have to keep in mind, and one of the reasons we're sort of, I don't want to say stuck with, but one of the things with Southwest is our neighboring dispatch centers, whether it's Hillsborough County, Milford Area Communications, or even Capital Region, which is out of Concord, they really don't have the capacity to take more people on. Everybody's call volume is increasing. And, to add, and we looked at Capital Region a year and a half ago, maybe? About a year ago, we met with the chief from Capital Region, a group of fire chiefs in this area. And yeah, they might take us on, but now all of a sudden they take us on, they need to add one more dispatcher on the day shift and evening shift. So that one dispatcher, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, is a $250,000 increase to them. We're not going to pay them $250,000. So it's not worth it for them to take us on. It's a very difficult game. It's really not unlike the game with the ambulance services. And I don't mean game, it's not funny, but the allocation of resources and who has capacity to do what and how is that shared and which comes first, the need for the service or the growth of the service to meet a need. And that's really what all of our communication centers are facing. All right, you got people that are in a hurry, so let's get back to the issue.
Dave, you have a question there?
I have a question about it. If we go to this upgraded dispatch and that, is Southwest Mutual Aid, are they an option for just backup during the night shift when we're not?
I don't think they would be, because one of the, we'd be right back in the same situation that Peterborough PD is facing now. You can only have one person, you can only have one entity receiving your calls from 911. So right now, all the calls for 911, 24 hours a day to Hillsborough County, even if Peterborough PD had dispatchers here. So we would sort of be in the same situation. We'd really have to have all of our calls going, unless we had people in the building 24 hours a day, we really have to have all of our calls going to Southwest.
So Southwest won't take police?
No, they don't. They gave police up.
But Hillsborough would take fire.
Yeah. They what?
Hillsborough would take fire.
Well, Hillsborough, Hillsborough again is facing the same, you may know more, but Hillsborough is facing the same problem with just being saturated. They just took on Hancock PD, just went to Hillsborough PD dispatch for that. And everyone's, again, it's this sort of shell game of resources.
There's a lot more turnover at Hillsborough County for dispatchers than there is obviously at our police department.
Can they cover like all of Manchester as well, Hillsborough County?
Not Manchester specifically, but different towns in Hillsborough County, along with the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I mean, New Ipswich PD, Bennington PD, Litchfield, they cover Towhegan Valley Ambulance, Temple Greenville PD, Greenville Fire, there's a whole bunch of different services.
A number of years ago, probably 20 plus years ago, Cheshire County Sheriff was also answered by Southwest, so you got, in Peterborough, you got, everybody was, you called the same place. You had two different frequencies, but you called the same place. Then the sheriff's department decided they wanted to run it themselves in Cheshire County, so they took it away from Southwest, so that was kind of the birth of this problem.
One more quick question on the salaries with your impending retirement. Have you built in your replacement salaries or in this budget?
Not my problem. Yes. So I can never be, no, the salary line item under the administration provides consistent funding throughout the entire year for somebody in this role, in my role. That addition of the vacation and sick paid is there. So Lily didn't zero out the fire chief salary from, November on. Yeah, that is included in there. Yeah.
We still need one of those.
Just to finish, other things that are up, one thing I think it's important to look at for ambulances training and the staff development cost. It's up about 58% to $15,000. We are transitioning the way we're doing our training. Licensed EMS providers in the state have a mandatory recertification period. So every 2 years, we're required to go through continuing education and meet competencies to show we still understand the job we're doing. We've switched to a online platform called Prodigy, which all of our members have access to, and that's where they're going to do sort of a lot of that didactic process. This increase, because we now have sort of been able to manage that mandatory recertification piece. The primary goal of this increase is to allow our people to go outside of our own department to do other more formal training programs, whether it's stuff on airway management, trauma, ventilators, the things that go above and beyond what is the minimum required to maintain that skill set as a provider. So this will give us a more robust opportunity to send people out or bring people in to provide a little more in-depth training for those types of things.
But you're dropping the tuition reimbursement program? Is that just?
So tuition reimbursement, the way the town's tuition reimbursement set up is tuition reimbursement is available to full-time employees. So full-time employees, and it's a tiered, or not tiered, but it's a percentage of your tuition, and it's based on available funding. We currently don't have anybody who has expressed a desire to go on. Dep. Fahey is just within, probably the last 4 hours.
Something like that.
Finished the coursework for his master's degree. So we don't have anybody else within the ambulance side, full-time employees, that has indicated they'd be looking for any tuition reimbursement. So that's zeroed out. That's the kind of thing that is put in or out depending upon available need. For that. And then of course you see the electricity. Again, that's up for us 910%. But that's because we have our all-electric building. As opposed to combination of fossil fuels and electric in the current building, plus the new building's a whole lot bigger, and the way the systems are run.
Okay.
Fire department budget?
No,
Oh,
Bonnie has one more thing.
Oh, sorry, Bonnie.
Yeah. So I just had a couple things I wanted to bring up for ambulance, right? That's what we've done. Okay. So, the 10,000 in computer services under administration, is that part of some type of upgrade? Because it's a bump from previous budgets, and historically there's been underspending even at 7,000. So it's 7,000, 7,000, 7,000, then 10,000, and even at 7,000 there's been some underspending.
So computer services covers any costs we have related to subscriptions for software programs that we're utilizing or whatever else. In last year's budget, which you weren't a part of, so last year's budget, we got funding for and implemented a new program called First Due, which is an inventory and asset management program. We also are looking to, within the Prodigy subscription comes under that, which is the online training program that we're utilizing for all of our people to provide their recertification. So these are two I guess, newer, they were programs that were new last year that are being, that the operating costs are being shown in this year's budget.
Okay, yeah, because last year was 7,000.
Yeah.
Same as the one before,
Yeah.
and same as the one.
Yeah, but we added those two programs. One is called First Due, which again is an asset and inventory management program, and then the second piece is that the Prodigy, the online training program for all of our providers.
The next question I had was in ambulance training, which is not a lot of money, but also has been underspent year over year by a good bit. And the budget is higher this year, proposed. So you had 2,500, 2,500, 2,500, and then 5,000, but nothing spent in 23-24, 41% spent in 24-25. So I just don't know why it's bumped up, especially since it's been underspent.
So to go along with the ability to increase the $15,000 for staff development, now that we have sort of managed to get a handle on that research training, which is the online, the Prodigy program I talked about, this will give us the opportunity to buy equipment and increase equipment to do the hands-on training for things that go beyond the basic. An example I will give you, all of our paramedics that are RSI certified go through an annual recertification for that. We buy pig tracheas and pig lungs so that they can practice intubation and tracheostomy. It sounds cool, but it's a cost. We have other disposable supplies that come with that. We're now required for starting the last cycle, all of our CPR mannequins have to be replaced because you're now required to use CPR mannequins that give feedback, both auditory and visual feedback for your compression, depth, and rate. So that's a requirement now through the American Heart Association. So we're really looking at trying to sort of upgrade and get things that are there. Honestly, one of the reasons that we often don't spend that money is we have a lot of goals for training. We have a hard time meeting them because, as I mentioned earlier, the majority of our staff are part-time people. They're capped at those 32 hours. So one of the dilemmas we face is, do we put somebody on an ambulance or do we spend money, do we use their hours to train them? And, you know, we've been so short-staffed for the last couple of years that we really, the training has really taken a back seat to a lot of our folks in their hours to make sure we can get those ambulances out the door.
Yeah, so I think the only thing I would say about that, and I appreciate that, is that if that's the dynamic, then let's not put the money into it. In other words, if you think you can spend it, great. If not, realistically.
But the concern is.
Or lower.
Well, the concern is, I mean, last year we spent I've got the number right here. Last year we spent, pull the number out. In the end, we spent 95% of our budget across all items in the fire and police department. You know, fire and ambulance. Sorry, didn't mean to steal that from George. Fire and ambulance. We spent 95% of our budget. So budgeting, municipal budgeting is not an exact science. And we rely on the ability to take a look at where we are in a project and decide, okay, there is something that is a higher priority. An example I will give you, middle of last year, and I don't know if you were on the board when we had this conversation, the state mandated that effective starting January 1 of last year, fire and ambulance services were no longer allowed to buy any station uniforms that contain PFAS.
Right, I'm aware of that.
So we suddenly had to pivot and looked at, similar to your energy rates starting February 1st, we had to pivot and look at about a 20% increase in every pair of pants, sweatshirt, and t-shirt and golf shirt that we bought for our staff. Again, something we didn't have the money for. And having the ability to meet those goals and have those goals in there also gives us the ability to ensure that we can meet our core programs across the entire year. You know, we had an issue 2 years ago where we spent almost $60,000 on repair to apparatus due to diesel fuel problems. You know, luckily we had, you know, it was towards the end of the year, but we had to make hard decisions. And, you know, we can't overspend our budget, but we can shift within it. So I think if, you know, you look at it as, yeah, it's only 1,000 here, it's only 1,000 here, it's not a big impact. across an entire budget, it's a huge impact. And there is the potential for it really to cripple us midstream in our core mission.
Yeah, no, I understand
Yeah.
that. It's unpredictable, things can happen, but it's a bit tricky to try to budget with that mindset, because what you're really, otherwise, why do we have these lines?
It's incredibly tricky. Well, we have to have the line because you can't spend money on an item unless there is an appropriation within that budgeted line,
Right.
which is the whole basis of the emergency management budget.
Right, but I guess the point I'm making is, I still think we should endeavor to make sure the line represents what people spend.
I will spend all $5,000 of that money next year, I promise. That's the position you're putting me in.
But
That's the position that we're being put in.
I think it's important, first to recognize that the training budget is down $5,800. So, I mean, there isn't, Chief didn't come in and just say, I gotta find somewhere to put that $5,800 so I don't lose it. He reduced the budget because he knows he doesn't need it. Secondly, there is a prioritization to make sure that our staff is trained. So we do put an emphasis on making sure that, and we're not overtraining the staff, I mean, Def he did get a master's degree that is pertinent to the work that he does, but we're not paying for everybody's to get a master's degree, and we're not budgeting that way. We're trying to make sure that there is funding and hours available for those folks. But at the same time, our top priority is providing the service.
Of course.
And so if we need to draw money elsewhere to make sure that the ambulance is, with 300,000 miles on it now, still is able to get out the door to go respond to a call, that we can spend an extra $15,000, $20,000, $60,000, whatever it takes to make sure that ambulance is out the door, and taking from somewhere that is less critical, like training. It's always the first place we go, good, bad, or otherwise, is the training budget.
I mean, when you look at, energy, 910% increase, and dispatch services, an 88% increase, we really no control over. Our entire budget's only up 5%.
No, I understand.
I
understand. It's just, it's a very long-standing pattern. That's all I'm.
Well,
because that's where we have to pull money out of.
That's the first place we go to pull when we need to.
And that's my question.
Yeah.
It's always the first place we go.
So.
In every department.
Yeah.
Well, and then that just makes me question it. I'll just have a few more, if that's okay.
The floor is yours.
Another area that has been consistently underspent is supplies under ambulance vehicle equipment. In 23-24, it was 22% spent, in 24-25, 30% spent. I just think this is, you've got 13-ish thousand across these years, but the amount spent has been quite low. I just wonder what can be done there. I'll just finish out and then you can respond. The other one, interestingly, is diesel fuel. Again, significantly underspent year over year. And just wondering about that one as well.
So diesel is actually a really good answer for, and Lily, and she figured it out and informed me. When we calculate our fuel consumption, it's a 7-year look back, 9-year look back?
9.5-year look back.
9.5-year look back. We stopped doing the transfer program 3 years ago. So when we stopped doing the transfer program, we saw a significant decrease in our diesel fuel usage because we weren't regularly going to Dartmouth and Portsmouth and Manchester and everything else. That wasn't taken into account. So that number will be changed. We will get it better. We will look at getting a number for that.
Yeah, because right now, it's still pretty high.
Right, because again, it was based on that 9-year average, which included 6 years of the transfer service.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that it was underspent even when we had it. So.
I think, do you have the total? Because one thing is very difficult. This comparison line by line, I don't think is either really fair or reasonable, because if one line is under 3%, but our entire budget is under 7%, then that's actually consistent. So really, the budget that we develop is to deliver the ambulance service. It is a bottom line budget. That's how all the budgets in the town are done. They're a bottom line budget. So my goal isn't to spend $5,000 in training. my goal is to spend no more than whatever my bottom line is for the ambulance service to ensure that the service is delivered to the residents. So if it is a huge give and take across those lines to meet that bottom line. And there are times where we have to take from here to ensure consistency here, and that the year we had all the repairs due to diesel fuel, a good example. So I don't know if you have the bottom line for those years, but what percentage of our budget did we spend? Because if we have underspent a bunch of lines by 3 or 4 or 5 or 10%, but we also underspent our whole budget by 10%, that's completely consistent. Because we were very fortunate that we didn't need to do the repairs we needed to do. Or we were incredibly unfortunate that we couldn't staff the shifts we had expected to staff. Either way, we're saving money. So I don't think it's reasonable to go line by line, because if you go line by line and do that, you're shortchanging the budget as a whole.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that it's a matter of transparency of spend. And to me, it's important to really try to understand the patterns and really make sure that the budget reflects those. Unless there's some change that happens, and of course then that's understandable, like the electricity rate or your retirement, or, right, there's some very obvious things that are different. But I do think that we should be thinking hard about how we're thinking about each one of these lines to make sure we're being really transparent about what it takes to run this. And if there's shifts and other things rise, then we should see it in that line.
We do.
And that makes it more understandable to follow.
They do, they are reflected in future years.
But I'm seeing in a number of cases where it's not. So that's my only concern. I'll just leave it there.
If I can just respond a little bit to the conversation. One of the things that we have really emphasized doing, because what used to happen, I've been here for almost 20 years, so what used to happen back in the day was when a budget was being overrun, vehicle repair and maintenance, was constant, if that budget was overrun, rather than overrunning that particular line, what department directors were encouraged to do was charge that invoice for vehicle repair and maintenance to a line that was being underspent. And so that's where you lost transparency. That was opaque spending. And so it was pretty ridiculous because it wasn't necessarily even within like the same grouping. You could say, well, I have to overspend my repair and maintenance line, so I'm going to charge that to training hours because I know that, and I'll just cancel some trainings, and that way I can make my budget come in flat. We stopped doing that, and we started, truly, charging only to the lines that the cost should be attributed to, so we could have transparent reporting. But yes, then we were also like, okay, we have to make sure that we're hitting that bottom line. So that's why we're going to underspend those things, even though we do still think they're important to have. They're a priority. There would have been a nice thing to be able to upgrade or to spend money on, but I don't have it available because I need to spend it on this other thing that is mission critical. So there has been a real push towards transparency, which I want to make sure that we're acknowledging. We're not hiding any spending. This is the true cost 1 year to the next. What you're not seeing, and I think Chief was trying to allude to that, what we don't have is what we budgeted in any of these old years.
Yeah, I put them in.
You wrote them in.
I wrote them in
Yeah.
so that I could see budget to actual, budget to actual, budget. That's what I have.
Yeah.
And that's how I did my analysis. So to me, that's where I'm coming from.
Right. So future budgets are reflective of the actual spending in the prior years.
Understood, but then when you see the patterns of the actual budget across those years, that's when you actually understand. So, by the way, I'm just, this is how I look at budgets and trying to be doing due diligence. I appreciate all the work that you and your department does for this town. And I want to make sure that you know that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Just to follow up what Bonnie was looking at, I think it might be valuable for the budget committee also to see some of these actual versus original appropriations for going back those years.
I think that would be
It's
so
great that you've
'cause
done the research there
it's
because
been a long time.
yeah, I bet.
We could look into it and see if there's a report that we can do.
That
I'm
would
not
be
sure
good.
if there is one.
Right.
Yeah.
There isn't one, no, it has to be manual.
No,
I mean,
Dan,
if you want to look at 10 years of, I mean, budget, actual, the font size is going to be incredibly
Right.
small.
Well, just even going back a couple helps.
Well, these
Yeah.
columns are pretty wide, you know, just parentheses.
It would be very challenging. If we can't just run a report.
It will be manual, I can do it.
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
okay.
I guess my comment would be that if you're talking about commodities, year after year, what we spend, and maybe boost the electricity because we know there's a boost, makes some sense to me. But what I just heard was because the chief didn't spend his budget for staff development, he doesn't get to ask for $15,000 for next year because he didn't spend it before. And so you're tying his hands to say, because you were constrained years previously and didn't do the training, I'm not going to allow you to budget that money to actually train the guys the way you want to next year. That's cutting your nose to spite your face. So there has to be some give and take in there, and this looks reasonable to me.
I think I was just making a point when it's like over 3 or
But
4
when it's
years.
over like four, like.
Right, you see
It
it.
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how many years it's over.
Yeah, I guess my point, David, is that if you should be able, you hopefully, as a department director, you should be able to anticipate what the dynamic is going to be for that year. And if realistically you can't get it done, right, what are you going to do? But if you can realistically imagine that you're going to get it done, then you should put it in. That's all I'm saying.
I think we should continue this conversation. I think we're an ongoing conversation. I don't think we're getting anywhere. If we could just move on. Dan, one second. Dan,
So
go
it
on.
seems to me that, listening to both the chief and Ronnie, that there's a need for some kind of a contingency line item because you can't budget things precisely. You have unexpected events happening. And in the current process, there's no way to deal with it unless you kind of put in a little fudge factor here and there, which is kind of understandable on a specific department basis, but the problem becomes if this process happens across all departments, and so you have built into the budget a lot of kind of invisible contingencies, which then distorts the overall budget. So wouldn't it be better to have a discrete line item that allows for some contingency so you don't have to like...
You can't
Not
do
in
that.
Hampshire.
New Hampshire state law doesn't allow contingency funding. You have that availability in other states, but in Hampshire, it's not something we're allowed to do.
I guess that's the issue.
That's really that's the bottom line.
Live free and die.
Go ahead,
Unless somebody has a question on the same line, I have a different question.
Yeah,
And that is.
please.
Well, maybe Don, did you want to follow up on this? What we're talking about here?
Just a quick observation, I've been around for a bit. 2008, we had the ice storm. That blew every line item out of the whole thing. Fire, police, highway, you know, you had to override everybody else's budget just to survive that 2 or 3 weeks, whatever. So there's always a little elephant in the corner that's gonna mess the whole play
And
uh,
we've
up.
talked about that previously too. That's why we have our fund balance too, to give us that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
Chief, you had some good news about the ambulance staffing. Can you talk briefly about the fire staffing?
Sure. So actually, if we move into the fire budget, you'll see right down, there's a 15% increase in our fire operations salaries. Just to, unlike the ambulance service, which is staffed 24/7 in the building, fire department is entirely an on-call department. So we all carry pagers around, the pager goes off, and hopefully the fact there's a fire call is more enticing to the person than whatever they're doing on their own. We have been able to not only get a whole bunch, by a whole I mean a half a dozen or so people in the last 12 months on the department, but they're enthusiastic people. So we've seen a pretty significant increase in the number of firefighters that we have responding to our calls. And that's really where we're looking at, you know, going up going up in our recommendation. And again, the number that here, the $198,000 here, is our best estimate based upon what we hope to have, what we expect to have for calls, and historically the number of people that come in to every call. Now that could drastically change. Something could happen next year and people decide not to come into calls, we don't spend it, or we could have 50% more calls than we had last year, and all of a sudden this 198,000 becomes 250,000 or 270,000. But the way that Lily and I calculate that number is really take a hard look at our historical call volume, and if you were to look, the number of people coming in for calls is trending on the upswing, which is great, because a few years ago there were times where the only one going to a call at night would be myself or one of the two deputy chiefs. And now we've got a good, for whatever reason, they like getting out of bed in the middle of the night. I don't know. But we've got a good group of people that are pretty enthusiastic about that. And that also impacts a little bit on the training side, but not as much as it did on the operations side. One question came up, just to clarify. There is an overtime line there. Although the individuals who work for us as call firefighters are bound to that same 32-hour-a-week rule, we do have 2 full-time DPW employees who are call firefighters. One is a lieutenant, the other is a firefighter. They're both very active, come into all the calls they can attend. They are automatically considered under that overtime line item because the town's already paying them 40 hours a week through DPW. So any hours they get from the fire department, because they're unplanned, unscheduled hours, have to count as overtime. We also have our full-time paramedics who, a lot of the trainings that not a lot, there are several trainings a year that are joint fire and EMS related. So again, those full-time paramedics are in there. When they're assisting with fire training and running fire training, they're paid out of the fire department budget as opposed to the ambulance budget. And we do that for the sake of the billing of the other communities, because it really isn't reasonable to have the other communities that we're partnered with for the ambulance service to pay 40% of the salary costs when a full-time paramedic is doing nothing but training our firefighters or working alongside our firefighters. So that's why that $20,000 is in there. It's a relatively low number, but it is important to have an overtime number in there to cover those 2 folks. And then the only other significant increase up with the fire station is that electricity, and again, it's 122%, but that really is looking at being based on our new building and having the new building in there, which we're all very excited about. Met with Chuck and John Lawler today. Steel should be done by the end of next week. If we get some warm days in there, they'll be able to pour the floor and then keep plugging right along. So that'll be good.
Chief, I have a general question, and maybe it's more anecdotal. You've mentioned that Keenan and other places are having a more increase in calls that's going on. Can you give us a flavor of where they're coming from, other than more population, or if that's effective?
So, I mean, our calls, and again, I don't, ambulance side, I mean, ambulance side is more people and more old people. Quite frankly, I mean, as you get, I mean, I'm over 60 now, so I'm getting into that tier. Percentage-wise, the rate of people in a certain age bracket that call for an ambulance increases as they go up. The other thing that causes an increase is, for our community compared to a lot of the communities around us, residents living in facilities tend to call for an ambulance more than residents who live independently at home. So 100 people in their 70s and 80s living in Rivermead are going to call for an ambulance more often than 100 people living in their 70s and 80s at their own home, because there's a reason they're living in a Rivermead or a Summerhill or a Scott Farrah. So because none of the communities around us, with the exception of Greenfield, have any place where you've got is elderly housing. Greenfield has their elderly housing complex right next to the elementary school. Nobody else around us has facilities like that. So our call volume in that area, and we don't have the numbers in front of us, but John, we ran the numbers last year as part of it. Looking at some of that, the striation there based upon type of call, both nature of call and age of the callers, we're seeing a significant increase in that, as are the other towns around us. The fire calls, I think a couple of things that are contributing to that. One of them is and it's leveled off a little bit, but a lot more people now have smoke and carbon monoxide detectors than they ever used to. A lot more of those people have those alarm systems tied into central stations. So before, if you just had your smoke detectors in your house, it goes off and it's a problem, you clear it, you never call anybody. Well, your alarm company gets the signal, the alarm company is calling the fire department and dispatching them, where before nobody would have called the fire department dispatching them. So we're seeing a few increases in those. But yeah, we're seeing ambulances up. The increase is a faster rate than the fire, faster rate, so obviously it's a much faster percentage also. But yeah, we are seeing that increase in call volume.
Yeah, I sense a lot of automobile accidents, but mainly it's because I read about it. Is that changing a little bit? Driving habits, whatever?
I think PD is seeing a lot more accidents. We, knock on something here, other than we've had a few pretty significant accidents in the last couple of weeks in the region. But the number of serious motor vehicle accidents with serious injuries, the accident we had in Elm Street 2 weeks ago was the first one we've had extrication for somebody actually trapped in a vehicle in a year. Maybe Peter, the Jeep accident at Peter Ridge was probably the last one. And that was maybe a year and a half ago. So again, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just, there's one line on the fire that I just wanted to ask about. It's,
Under what section?
on fire operations.
Okay.
Supplies. It's been overspent by a lot, and I don't see it reflected in the budget. I'm concerned that there's not enough in there. So it was overspent by 342% in 23-24, 248% in 24-25. So obviously we want to stay flat, but
Right.
that did stand out to me.
I have to go back and look at specific invoices to see where that, so what supplies covers is, it's anything that isn't related to actual repair of the building or vehicle maintenance. So it's all sort of the other stuff that we have to buy. Yeah, right, yeah, it's all mostly expendables.
Right.
And could these be
And as
cases
the
where you
vehicles
had,
get older, they need more.
Well, it's not vehicle, no, that's vehicle maintenance and supplies. There's a separate vehicle maintenance category.
Could these be cases where you had offsetting revenue from a grant or from some kind of?
I don't know.
Sometimes you come in and.
I don't think, we haven't had any.
We'd have to pull it.
I just want
Yeah,
to
we'd
make
have to
sure
pull
that
it,
we're
yeah.
If the grant came in the year that
Putting
you
10
spent
grand a
it,
year in it?
it would be
Into those couple of
offsetting.
years?
Right.
If
But
the
I don't
grant came in
remember
years
getting any.
later.
Yeah, we didn't get any grants.
Getting any.
No, I don't, no.
We'd have to, we'll just have to go back and
Anyways,
look.
yeah, we can do that.
Okay, right. That was in the same year of spending.
If I could, Chief, I'm not sure if you've discussed this with the administration, but I noticed there's a very big number for retirement, sick, and vacation, which you'll be able to get. That's great. Has there been any discussion, maybe deferring that, like from a personal perspective? That's all income.
I'd be happy to wait till January 1st and put it on my 2026 tax.
Well, not only that, but maybe fiscal 28 instead of fiscal 27. I don't know if you've got it. Maybe to your
I have not had that.
There are also some statutory requirements, and I don't know if you can get around the statutory requirement, like for especially vacation time. I don't know if you can really be more of the expert on that.
It could just be beneficial to you, and it could be beneficial to us.
The payout is just with regards to whatever he has on the book, so.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying if we could defer it, maybe it would help our budget this
I
year.
can start
It would
that
help-
on my
And also help the chief.
We can only defer it if he stays on as a full-time employee. So if he retires or goes to part-time, we're required to pay it out.
That's my question.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if you had any flexibility.
No, that's the only way
Because
that
that's
we'd
going
be
to
able
bump
to
them up
defer
to a
it.
nice little tax bracket for a year.
So, okay, fine, I'll stay till January 1.
You might want to think about it for tax purposes. Talk to your accountant. Any other questions? And so maybe we'll just, you have 30 seconds to talk about emergency management.
So fortunately, again, knock on wood, the emergency management, so if you look at emergency management, the administration and the operations side, luckily in emergency management operations, we really haven't had to spend any money. Again, going back to the fact that unless there is money allocated in a line item, you can't spend on that line item. Recently, the emergency management budget, obviously during COVID, we did quite a bit with that, both out of that and then someplace to process money from grants that we received as well as other things. But any sort of disasters or anything or grant opportunities, emergency management may be where some of the money sits if we get any grants for the fire station around radio equipment or things like that, bring them into there and use them out of that through the EMPG, the emergency management planning grants that the state has. So it's really, it's having the ability to respond to, and like I said, knock on wood, we haven't had any 2008 ice storms since 2008.
And obviously with this small amount, that we wouldn't be able to cover anything like that. It would have to come from somewhere else.
Yeah. But we at least have the ability to do that.
You took on revenues too, is there significant?
Sure.
Okay, what page are we at?
Page 3 is fire, and page 4.
So one of the biggest jumps you'll see it's two jumps. One is fire inspection fees. One of the things that we, for fire inspection fees, we've got, working with Laura, Deb Winters primarily, and me once in a while, a really good system for tracking and managing fire inspections. One of the problems that we had a couple of years ago was people just simply weren't pulling permits. But now through initial cooperation with the building department downstairs, Tim Herlihy, on stuff that's new construction, and now just installers being aware that there's a permitting process and what that permitting process is, and having a defined way to manage it with Laura there 5 days a week as opposed to my previous admin only working part days, not every day of the week. We're really capturing everything we should be capturing for that. One other big change you see is for the town of Sharon. One of the things we will be doing is, in the past, the Sharon's dispatch fee, which this year is over $10,000, almost $11,000, we are fully allocating to the town of Sharon. Previously, that was just absorbed into our budget as one of our operating costs, but quite frankly, we didn't really know why that happened. Not only that, but the formula that's applied is really based entirely on the town of Sharon. It's based on their equalized valuation, their population, so it really is a cost for them. When we were going through the budget planning process this year, we decided that we will continue to receive that bill and then pass that entire cost on. If Sharon doesn't want to pay it through us, there's nothing to stop them from reaching out to Southwest and saying, hey, send us that bill directly. But starting with next fiscal year, 100% of the cost for dispatch service to the town of Sharon, which again is population and equalized valuation based, is going to be borne by them.
Are they aware of that increase? Have they been told yet?
No, we haven't informed them, but we always try to get through our budget process first, or at least this meeting before we.
Because they get services from multiple town departments, so there's the whole thing. We're going to keep piling it on them. And then other costs, town for services, again, we're looking at an increase in that revenue there. Unfortunately, that increase in revenue is driven by an increase in the cost of running of the ambulance budget. So there's an increase there. That covers about 45% of the total operating cost for the ambulance. Ambulance 911 service fees, those are our billing fees. The select board voted at a December meeting to increase our base billing rate. The main reason for increasing that was the governor recently signed a law that compels New Hampshire insurers, so it's about 15% or so of our patients, to pay either their negotiated rate with the ambulance service or 325% of the Medicare rate in the state. So we brought our rates up to that 325% of the Medicare rate because they wouldn't pay us, that. We've applied for and have received requests back for, I think we're up to 5 or 6 of the of the insurers in the state to start that negotiation for the contract. The state did try to make it easy. There is a state model contract. Of course, that's not used by any of the insurance companies, but it's a sample of what it could look like. So we need to start looking through that. So we're anticipating a little bit of an increase there. Again, that's all predicated on call volumes continuing to do what they've been doing. If we wind up with another pandemic and nobody calls the ambulance, then all bets are off. But that's, that's based on that.
I was just,
Go ahead.
I was just curious about the ambulance transfer service fees, because I know that it went down, and I understand about that.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is that it went down to 11,000 in 25-26, but now it's up.
We've started doing a few more of those out of there because so we have always, just to refresh people who might be listening and don't remember, we stopped doing the transfers in 2023. It was really because we no longer had the capacity to do that. Even then, we were committed to trying to move any patient out of Monadnock Community Hospital whose life really depended on getting to definitive care. So, but one of the constraints for that always has been the ability to move those patients due to lack of paramedics. Now that we're starting to get ourselves back up and should be in a position where we have those 2 paramedics on every shift, we should be in a position to do a lot more of those transfers than we were able to do in the past. So we're hoping that we'll have that for an availability.
So when we didn't have the staffing sufficient to do that, it was just going to commercial?
Yeah, it would go to, either the patient would wait or it would go to somebody else. And there are a few services around, but again, it takes a long time. You look at moving a patient from Monadnock to CMC takes 3 hours for an ambulance. So if they have to move 2 patients and there's only 1 truck, it's 6-hour ordeal for them. Yeah.
So now that you have the staffing, so are you communicating? Well, obviously, where this is proposed, but will you be communicating to MCH that you now have some capacity?
So the guidelines are still the same. So Monadnock Community Hospital will still reach out to us based on the guidelines. It just gives us potentially gives us the ability to say yes more often.
Yeah. Okay.
So your total ambulance income is about 1.6 million under this budget, and expenditures are 2.4. So the difference is coming out of the revolving fund, or is it coming from other places as well, or am I not thinking about that correctly?
The difference is the money that we use
That's coming from taxation. You closed out the revolving fund 2 years ago.
So that's
We'll not close it out, but we are not budgeting.
So
We don't budget the ambulance out of it all.
that's the money. So right now,
So it's raised and appropriated.
yeah.
Yes.
So that is essentially what the Peterborough taxpayers will be paying. So they'll be getting. That's what we refer to as the delta that we use in calculating the cost to the other communities.
Right.
So,
Yeah, thank you for clarifying
Yeah.
that. I've had enough. How about everybody else?
I'm out of budget, so.
Hopefully we're not paying select board overtime for the extra time.
yeah, we'll double their pay for tonight's meeting.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your patience, and Chief, thank you for going through all
No,
this.
thank you very much. And again, if any questions come up, feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, one last thing.
Yes,
We just
go
need
ahead.
a vote to approve the minutes of the last meeting by the budget committee.
Right, I thought we kind of did that.
They-
Kind
Did you?
of combined.
Okay,
Tyler brought
I
up the
didn't catch
budget at
it
the same
then, all
time.
right, great.
So, well, we'll do that formally, though. Does everyone have a chance to look at the minutes from last week, and does anyone have any problems with it? Otherwise, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? So those are- And motion to adjourn, and then second.
That's my favorite.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.